Today's recipe calls for some pumpkin puree. I'm going to show you how to make a pumpkin coffee cake with a maple frosting. It's super dang delicious and easy to make as well. So with that said, let's get started. The first thing we need to do so we can start these classic treats with that fall twist is preheat the oven box. Set the temp to 350 Fahrenheit or 176 degrees Celsius. Next, we can move on to collecting all of our dry goods into one area. Snag a medium-sized holding apparatus and a fine mesh strainer. Drop in 1 2/3 cup or 209 grams of all-purpose flour, 1 teaspoon baking soda, half a teaspoon ginger, half a teaspoon mace, half a teaspoon allspice, and 2 teaspoons cinnamon. Once all the spices are in the strainer, sift everything into one giant dusty cloud of goods. Push through any clumps that were left behind. Next, add half a teaspoon freshly ground nutmeg. The pre-ground stuff will also work, just add it in with the rest of the spices. Give the microplane a tap or two to knock loose anything that may be stuck. Make it hail half a teaspoon sea salt. Following that, whisk your face off to bring all the dry ingredients into one. Mix and whisk until you see a ton of little speckles of spices mixed about in your flour. After all of that work, drop in 2 1/4 cups or 191 grams of old-fashioned rolled oats. Give those a whisk into the flour mixture. I found it much easier to use a spoon to mix it. It's best to do things in this order of steps because when I made protein pumpkin chocolate chip oatmeal cookies, I tossed the flour, the spices, and the oats all together and tried mixing it. Things didn't work all that well. The oats settled on the bottom of the bowl, so the spices didn't mix well into the flour, and the oats didn't become coated in the flour mixture. This is why I did the steps in the way I did. Anyways, once you think everything has been mixed well together, set it aside for now. Let's move on to the wet goods next. Collect a small bowl and 3 to 4 paper towels, or a dark colored kitchen towel will also work. Use a dark towel because the pumpkin will stain a lighter one. To that, add in 1 cup or 240 grams pumpkin puree. Ensure it's puree, not pumpkin pie filling. Grab another 2 to 3 paper towels to pat dry the top of the puree. Allow the goods to hang out for a few minutes. We're trying to absorb as much of the liquid as possible. This will help ensure that our cookies will stick together once baked and done. Once you've patted it down, remeasure it. We need to ensure that we have roughly 3/4 cup or 170 grams worth. Being slightly over or under will be fine. Set the orange goop aside so we can move on to the next thing. Using a stand mixer with a paddle attachment or a hand mixer with a large bowl, add in 1 cup or 226 grams room temperature unsalted butter. Give it a quick mix to break it up before we add the next ingredient in, which is 1 cup or 200 grams lightly packed dark brown sugar and half a cup or 100 grams granulated sugar. Cream the butter and sugar together until the butter becomes lighter in color and has doubled in size. Should take about 5 to 6 minutes on medium-high speed. I like brown sugar more than granulated sugar. That's why I used more of it. If you do this, understand your final end product will be a bit darker in color. Not interested in that? Then simply switch the two and use more granulated sugar than brown sugar. Also, no matter what you decided, break up any brown sugar clumps before you add it to the bowl. This will help ensure everything gets mixed in really well. Throughout this entire process, stop and scrape down the bowl, hitting the sides, bottom, and the paddle attachment. Doing this will make sure our cookie dough will be perfectly mixed together. Also, creaming it for this long will give us a light and soft cookie. Following the creaming process, add the pumpkin puree in. Give that a quick mix until everything has become orange in color. Once that has happened, we'll add the yolk from 1 large room temp egg. Save the egg white for another recipe or for a snack. Next, add 1 tablespoon vanilla extract in. Mix these 2 ingredients into the others until they've been fully incorporated in. Stop midway through to scrape the bowl down and start mixing it once again. When everything has been mixed well, let's add the dry goods in. I like doing this step in 2 sets. This will help ensure we do not overwork our dough. Add about half of the dry stuff in. Force the two things into one on a low to medium speed. Mix right up to the point where it has barely just been mixed in. Give the bowl a scrape down and then dump in the rest of the dry goods. Mix until things are fully incorporated together. Do not overmix your cookie dough. Doing so will activate the gluten, causing our cookies to be dense and dry. Once things look like they are one giant mess of orange stuff, switch your tool to a rubber spat. This way we can fold and scoop things to finish mixing it, making sure you hit the sides and bottom of the bowl. Things are notorious for getting stuck here. Now that our dough is made, it's time to prep our pan. Snag a half tray, line it with parchment paper or a baking mat. I love silicone baking mats. I just hate cleaning them. Anyways, let's portion out a single cookie to do a test bake. This is optional, but it'll help give you an idea if you need to adjust anything to end up with the best results. Things you may need to adjust is bake time or how much you flatten the cookies before they go in. Each cookie should weigh between 25 and 30 grams or about 1.5 tablespoon sized balls of dough. We're shooting for each one to be roughly the same size. This way they will match up to one another later on. A cookie scoop is perfect for this task, but mine is broken, so I had to do it by hand, which is totally fine. This dough is very sticky, so don't panic and add a bunch of flour. It's meant to be this way. I chilled mine for around 10 to 15 minutes. That seemed to help just a little bit. When dropping things on the lined out tray, leave a little space between each cookie to allow them to slightly spread during the baking process. Now that you've fought to get as close as possible to the same sizes, we need to ever so slightly flatten the dough balls out. We're shooting for a thickness of about 1/4 inch. Doing this will help them spread outward during the baking process. We want this to happen so we can have a good sized area to apply the center filling to. When everything has been flattened out, grab those raw hunks of orange goo. Toss the tray into the preheated oven box on the middle rack for the best results. Set a timer to bake the goods for 14 to 16 minutes or until the edges have set. Times may vary depending on how hot your oven runs. This is why we did the single cookie test bake. Once the buzzer rings, pull those sweet treats out of the heat. This is optional, but while they are still warm, try to shape the edges into somewhat of a perfect round shape. This way, we can achieve something that is aesthetically pleasing. Allow them to hang out on the tray for 5 to 6 minutes to let them fully set up. After that, transfer them over to a wire rack to completely cool down. Repeat the same process for the rest of the cookie dough. You should end up with about 36 cookies for the sandwiches, giving us a total of 18 cream pies. Once all the cookies have been baked, let's move on to making the cream cheese filling. Use the bowl of a stand mixer with a paddle attachment or a hand mixer with a large bowl. Toss in 4 tablespoons unsalted room temp butter. The butter will stabilize the cream cheese so it's not a giant runny mess later on. Following the fat, add the other fat, known as 8 ounces or 226 grams of full fat room temp cream cheese. Mix these two ingredients together. Oh wait, the stand mixer needs to be plugged in for it to work. Oh man, so embarrassing. Anywho, mix them on a medium-low speed until they are fully incorporated together. It should take maybe 2 to 3 minutes. Ensure you give the bowl a few good scrapes to help everything mix into one. Once it's all in one giant mess, we'll add some sweetness to the bowl. Make it snow 1.5 cups or 180 grams powdered sugar. It's best to sift the sugar into the bowl. Powdered sugar is notorious for being clumpy. We want to break those clumps up so that everything mixes in really well. Try not to make a mess like I did, but on second thought, I was always told if you're not making a mess, it won't taste good. Push through any clumps that were left behind. This next ingredient is optional. Drop in 1 teaspoon ground cinnamon. Once the dry goods are in the bowl of fat, toss it back onto the mixer. This way, we can incorporate those in with the rest of the stuff. Mix right up to the point where you no longer see any powdered sugar. We do not want to overmix this. Doing so will cause the cream cheese to break, releasing all the water it holds, giving us a soupy mess. To add some flavor, make it rain 1 teaspoon vanilla extract extract. This next step is optional. To bring more flavor to our dessert, we'll add in 1 to 2 tablespoons of that Vermont juice, also known as maple syrup, which plays really well with the pumpkin. Using a rubber spat, fold the syrup in, right up to the point where you can no longer see it. If you want to keep that classic pure bright white color in the middle of these dessert sandwiches, skip adding the cinnamon and syrup in. Also, use a clear vanilla extract. Now that our frosting is made, give it a quick taste test and adjust the flavors as needed. With some coarse ground kosher salt, snag a piping bag and a tip if you have one. If not, grab a large zip top style bag. A trick to putting this messy, sticky stuff in the bag is to grab a large vessel or cup. Place one corner of the bag inside of it, pushing it all the way to the bottom. From there, fold the excess bag over the side of the cup to completely open it up. Using a spoon or rubber spat, add the frosting in. Scrape the tool clean on the edge of the vessel you're using. Repeat the same process until everything has been added. Ensure you scrape the bowl clean, no need to waste. Pull the holding device out of the other holding device using the overhang of the bag. If using a plastic bag like I am, pinch the corner we'll be using as the tip of our piping bag. This will prevent any frosting from getting into it. Use your hand to push the frosting towards the one corner you chose, while holding on to the free space in the corner. Lightly push to somewhat flatten out the sugar goo. This will push out any trapped air that may be present, giving us a much better looking end product because we'll be able to pipe the frosting easier. After that's happened, push the frosting back together a little. Snag a pair of kitchen shears and cut the tip of the corner off. Don't cut it too wide or too small. Somewhere in the middle is a good option. Ensure you toss that little piece that you cut off because nobody wants to eat that. When you have that figured out, start to play the matching game. Pair cookies that are as close to the same size as possible. This way, we can achieve the most aesthetically pleasing dessert. It'll also make it easier to handle and eat. Now back to the bag of sugar. Grab the bag at the top where there is no frosting and twist it shut. It's imperative that you do this step. If you didn't do it during the piping process, when you squeezed the bag, the frosting would shoot out of the top, making a huge mess. It's not very fun, trust me, I've done it. After you're done doing this, you should have a tight bag of frosting. A little may come out, which is fine. It's pushing all of the air out. Let's get to decorating. Snag your first pair of cookies. Flip them over so that the flat side is facing upward. We want the flat sides to make contact with the frosting. Depending on the shape and size of your cookies, pipe on roughly 2 to 3 tablespoons of the frosting. When doing this, use 2 hands because safety first. One hand will guide the bag as the other one applies pressure to push the frosting out. You can slap it on in a zigzag pattern or just make a mound of goodness. Things don't have to be perfect, just do your best to put equal amounts on all of them, so we can assure all of them will get some frosting. Once it's been hit with the sugar paste, toss the top on and gently push it down so it sticks together. Repeat the same process until everything has been made into dessert sandwiches. If you have any frosting left over, like I did, spread it out amongst the goods, or use it on pancakes or French toast or whatever you fancy. Anyways, now that these bad boys are done, eat some right away or store them in an airtight container in the fridge box. Share this classic treat with the people or just lie to them and say the recipe didn't work out and just keep them for yourself. Whatever you decide to do, just enjoy.
Alright, now that our pumpkin oatmeal cream pies are done, let's give them the old taste-a-roo. So looking at them, they came out super aesthetically pleasing. The cookies themselves look like they're going to be very, very soft and delicious. They got a little bit darker than they should have just because we used that brown sugar. If you use regular sugar, it wouldn't be so bad, but that color just means there's some nice caramelization, which of course is going to be a ton of flavor. The frosting on the inside looks very tasty as well. Looks like a ton of little speckles in there from our cinnamon, and it just looks like it's going to be very good together. It just looks amazing. So let's give it a shot. I already tried to eat one, so I'm just going to eat that one. These little dessert cookie sandwiches came out super dang good. The cookies themselves have that nice pumpkin flavor to them, and it really intensifies the goodness with all them dang spices that we added from the ginger, the mace, and the cinnamon as well. We get a bit of sweetness from all the sugar that we added, but they're not overly sweet by any means. And you get a faint hint of the vanilla extract as well, and they're slightly rich from the butter and the egg yolk that we added. The cream cheese frosting is super dang tasty as well. You get a faint hint of the maple syrup in the background, which pairs really well with the pumpkin. And you get a ton of richness and fat as well from the butter and the cream cheese. And the cream cheese also has that tangy, delicious goodness, that super distinct flavor that pairs well with the rest of the goods. And of course, you get a good pop of cinnamon as well. That caramelization that we got on the outside and the bottom of our cookie also brings a ton of goodness to the table. All combined together, it's super good. Texture-wise, the cream cheese frosting is light and airy, and it just kind of melts in your mouth. The cookies are all super soft and tender, and the bottoms and the edge as well bring a little bit of crunch factor, which helps break up the texture of everything. They're just super good, and I ate it all, so I'm just gonna pretend to walk away with one. These things are really easy to make, and you can make them any which way you want to suit your needs. Maybe make a basic cream cheese frosting and don't add all of those additives to keep it simple, or get real bougie with it and add some shaved dark chocolate, because dark chocolate and pumpkin go so well together. It sounds super tasty. So hopefully you enjoyed today's video. Thanks for watching. And I sent a picture of these to my friend, and he wants me to send him one, so I'm gonna go figure out how to do that and ship it overnight, even though he lives across town. And I'm speed talking, so I'm just gonna go, and we'll see you on the next one. This cookies came out, cookies of fat and richness, fatness, fattiness, fat boy. These little sweet treats are super simple, super all the time with the supers. Come on now. I think I'm just gonna give them distinct tanginess, which is super good. You get a faint hint of the maple nope, not extract, real maple syrup.